Hey guys, it's your friendly neighbourhood nose blower. Because this is late afternoon, I don't feel like blowing my nose. I woke up at 5:30 this morning and I've cleared everything out already. Um, so, what are my thoughts on what's been going on in the world lately? Whew. Putin is... Oh. Oh, great. Right. Someone's taken the tobacco with them when they went to sleep because she's got a night shift tonight, so I've got no filter tips left. Scratch out the ashtray. There you go. Well, Putin claiming that if the West allowed Ukraine to use their weapons to strike Russia, that they were at war with Russia. Well, that basically means America, UK, France and Germany, some of the biggest arms dealers in the world, should, by Putin's judge of what is being at war, be at war with most of the rest of the world. Oh, that's better. Needed that. I very rarely have enough money to have a pint on my way home from whatever I've been doing. Meanwhile, in the Sudan, we could be looking at a crisis. Colours keep fading and going weird. Don't know why that is. We could be looking at a crisis that is up there with the Ethiopian famine of the 1980s, because the ruling junta and the rebels, I suppose you'd call them, have been systematically laying waste to and slaughtering civilians. The rebels especially have been looting and burning villages, destroying farms. And generally making life hell for the civilian population at a time when the country has been experiencing ecological problems as well. So we have a perfect storm there of droughts, destruction of agricultural infrastructure, leading to inflation, war. Aid companies, a lot of them won't go there because it risks their staff being kidnapped and or killed and caught in the crossfire. And it seems that no one's got the means or the inclination to involve themselves militarily. But we all know how that kind of thing has gone. In Somalia before. I believe Black Hawk Down is based around that. Or it was somewhere like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of countries in Africa that the same thing can be said about. And yet the West and the East All the major powers keep interfering, don't they? From the presence of Russia's Wagner mercenaries in various African countries to the selling of weapons to these regimes. All sides are guilty. The Chinese, the Russians, the UK, France, Germany, USA. We're all playing at power politics in these countries, and it stirs up the hornet's nest. Then there's Haiti in the Caribbean. It's basically a lawless area. It's fallen apart. There's trouble in South and Central America. The Azerbaijan and the Armenians are still basically watching their borders, and the Azeris have the upper hand at this moment, from what I last heard. You've got China posturing in the South China Sea. There is a great deal of theorising that China may drop Russia. We have Putin making the whole Russian government resign, basically, to make way for changes, apparently. Yeah. Okay. Is he going to be declaring himself Arch Generalissimo saviour of his country, do we wonder? I don't know. But, you know, I mean, one major British arms manufacturer has decided to do something very decent and ecologically minded. They've basically decided to substitute all the lead in their 155mm howitzer shells to make sure they're ecologically friendly, so you can rain down death and destruction on your enemies, but your conscience is clear ecologically. I just find that wonderfully darkly humorous. Personally, I had an encounter today that made me realise how some people get away with such awful behaviour scot-free. Before the current downstairs neighbour, we had this guy that I christened Shitbag Steve. He was a narcissistic, drunken, abusive, alcoholic man baby who would, at least twice a week in the 4 weeks he was there, go on these 24-hour long drunken binges where he would scream and holler and bang things about mentally, and we allegedly physically abuse his girlfriend. At one particular point, he'd already kicked off once and we'd phoned the police. We were worried for her safety. At one point she'd locked him out of the flat and he was hammering on trying to break the door down. So we called the police. I think this is how it went. It was a long time ago now. And then basically one time when my partner was at work, I think, I'd just gotten in the bath around about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and he was hammering on my door, demanding to speak to me. And I was like, I don't want to speak to you, mate. I'm trying to relax. I'm having a bath. Will you F off? And he got really aggressive. and started hammering on my door, at which point I called the police and turned the phone to them so they could hear exactly, because he was threatening me by this point. I mean, he's about, only comes up to my shoulders, pot-bellied, pock-marked, unfit wanker. I could have floored him in 5 minutes. I was sober. But I've been drunk, I'd have had a problem. And the police turned up and calmed him down, and there were 2 more times. Literally one day he went on a 24-hour binge because his telly wasn't working. And when the repairmen came round at 8:30 in the morning, he was still pissed and carried on drinking, and they had to deal with him. I felt sorry for them. Then there was the time his partner phoned the ambulance because he'd passed out on the sofa and had basically stopped breathing near enough. What a shame. And she phoned an ambulance. The ambulance drivers were both, the paramedics were both female, and as soon as he regained consciousness, he started getting nasty and aggressive with them, so they called the police on him. I was in B&M today because I was over where I occasionally volunteer. I was unofficially helping out, like I do when I'm feeling a bit restless and need to do something. And there was him, and what was even more shocking, his partner was back with him. She left him while he was here. I don't know how he persuaded her to come back. But I think maybe she has Stockholm Syndrome, as they call it, where she's become so obsessed and connected to her captor she cannot leave him. And that's sad that people in abusive relationships get in that situation. I know it happens. That kind of put a dampener on my day. Has anything made me laugh? Well, I suppose even though I didn't watch it, because it's American politics, and the fact that Trump is accusing the moderators of being unfair to him by calling him out on some of his more bullshit claims, well, I find that quite laughable. Something about all immigrants eat dogs and cats, wasn't it, or something? Well, maybe in their own country they do, but, you know, good meat is relatively cheap in the US, so I shouldn't think they resort to that. From what I hear, please correct me if I'm wrong. Or meat, at any rate, not necessarily good quality. Oh, pardon me. So I got told off for farting on camera, wouldn't I? I just feel that the whole world has become a massive armed camp, and the major powers are waiting to see who blinks first. And then World War III. Do I think it'll be the Armageddon? No, possibly not. I've always thought the majority of those in power will pull back from the brink simply because it's not in their interest. Posturing and threatening is within their interest. In order to keep their populations afraid of the enemy, whoever the enemy may be. But to actually destroy the world, and their money, finances, and power bases along with it. I don't think even Putin's that mad. Although I could be wrong. Yesterday I found myself being all too human, and I didn't like it much. Not in a good way. Basically, I found myself jealous in a situation where I shouldn't have been. A certain person who, when I first met, there was a bit of a spark there, but we've become friends. She introduced me to her current, loose partner, and I felt a pang of jealousy, which I shouldn't. I've had a partner for 20 years. And I said to myself, what are you doing? Why are you feeling like this? You shouldn't. It's none of your business. And I really told myself off for that one, because I had no right to feel that way. Yeah. Human emotions are complicated things. Especially other people's. Other people are just complicated as far as I'm concerned. I find dealing with other people far too complicated most of the time. And yet I choose to do this. Maybe on the internet it's kind of arm's length to me. It's not real. Hell, the only reason I engage with some of the trolls on here when they appear is because any comments, providing they don't get censored by the YouTube bots or reported, well, it's engagement, isn't it? I understand how the algorithms work. I have no bullet in there. Don't worry, it's a fake plastic one. The gun never turned up. Thank you, Temu. So the last time I ordered from them, I've got one magazine with about 9 rounds and no gun to fire them from. I'm sure I could probably make something. I just don't know what to think about the world these days. The stupidity of human nature never ceases to amaze me. I just think I'm really down at the moment. It's the old story. People promise things and they never follow through with them. I should learn to expect that these days. You give people your time and effort, hoping to get somewhere, and it just never happens. Yeah. And on my finances, I keep having to turn down opportunities, chances for engagement with people. Even just the chance to have a little fun. Because you can't expect to have any fun on a limited income. Don't be silly. You're not allowed to. The only way you can have fun is when you're consuming. And when you have a very limited income, you're not a consumer. I mean, I suppose at least the thing is, I have an excuse to fob off the chuggers, a genuine one. Charity muggers. You know, the people that stand in the street. I don't know if you get these in the US and other countries. And they are trying to encourage you to set up a direct debit to a certain charity or community project or something like that. And some of them are very good. You know, there's a couple of them today that were like, "Oh, love your hat and your outfit, sir." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, but," because I know what's coming next. And the fact that I have no reliable monthly income means if I set up a direct debit, I'd be the one in debt. And I'd rather not do that. I'm sure your cause is very worthwhile, but that's how it is. Bye. And then there's the preachers. I mean, in this country, we have the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists, both of which just calmly stand there and nod to you. Most of them know me. But then you get those who seem to have come over from foreign countries, specifically Africa and Southeast Asia. They tend to have megaphones and wear billboards and get really shouty and confrontational. And there was one day, well, I think it was on the Tuesday, I walked my standard route. Had one of them, without so much as asking, thrust a leaflet into my hand, and I pointedly looked at him and walked over to the nearest bin and put it in because I'm not interested. And then when I came back, the same man tried it again, and I said, "You've already given me a leaflet, can you please leave me alone?" The very next day, the same man, after I made it plain that I wasn't interested, tried to hand me a leaflet again, and this time I just said, "F off." It's not like I look like everyone else. I wear a very distinctive wide-brimmed leather hat. I dress distinctively. So my point is, you do not care for the individual if you don't recognise a very recognisable individual. You are just pushing a product. That is all you're doing. You know, at least have the decency to recognise someone you've already tried. It annoys the shit out of me when they do that. The ones with the megaphones are the worst. And then there's one particular idiot in town who's not a preacher. He's just a knob, I would call him. He will ride through town on one of those electric bicycles with seemingly random pop music blaring out of speakers. You know, it's like he can't afford, one of those souped up boy racer, as we call them in this country, cars. They have the massive speakers in the back, so he just rides his bike through the pedestrian areas in town, which they are allowed to do, by the way. And he just cruises through town with this sort of like smirk on his face because he's subjecting people to his music. And I would swear he's probably in his 40s. I mean, yeah, when I was 20, I was that I had that amount of utter disregard for fellow human beings. I will admit that. I was very arrogant. But now I have some consideration for people. It'd be nice if occasionally people had consideration back, wouldn't it? That makes me unreasonably angry sometimes. And I don't get it. Right. Well, I think I'm probably going to watch, I don't know, Star Trek Next Generation or something like that. Because that kind of thing gives me hope. And hope, I think, is in scant supply at the moment in this world we live in. But you've just got to hang on to whatever hope you can find, even if it isn't a real hope. It's the only way to keep you going. And if you're very angry at the world around you, use that anger to keep yourself going. And if you can, in some small way, try and improve the world, do so. Whether it's picking up rubbish that someone's just thrown on the street, or in my case, occasionally actually shouting at people for doing it. No one gives me much trouble, I'll tell you. Or, you know, on one occasion about 2 or 3 weeks ago, shouting at an entire street for dumping their crap broken furniture right in front of my property. I don't care if they dump it outside their own houses, but no, they shift all this shit onto someone else's doorstep. And I basically, middle of the afternoon, sober, basically shouted very loudly that the next person from down this street who dumps their old broken furniture in front of my property will find that piece of furniture going through their front window. Funny enough, in 3 weeks, and this used to be a regular weekly thing, we haven't had any broken furniture dumped. There you go. Apparently I was wrong to do that, according to certain people, but it seems to have at least temporarily solved the problem, and thus made the neighbourhood that little bit better a place to live. Sometimes you have to use intimidation and aggression to actually get people to do the right thing. I hate it, but it's a fact of life. Just like at this moment in time, we still need men like the mercenaries who are fighting for the Ukraine. They are violent men. They're war junkies, a lot of them. Some of them are very principled. There was one 57-year-old parachute regiment veteran from this country who was doing it for idealistic purposes. Very simplistic idealistic purposes. I think his unit probably called him Grandad because he's 57, he's 5 years older than me. But he reckoned in training he was running rings around guys half his age, so because he's always kept himself fit. Lovely bloke. Mortimer. I admire him because he is really standing up for what he believes in. I cannot do the same because I do not have the expertise. I would be cannon fodder. And I'm better than that. Well, I think that's about it. I think I have much more to say. I may put up something later if I get bored, which often happens. Ciao.